They were gonna do it.
Why don't you throw
Here you go.
Today is Tuesday, January the 21st, 2025. It is 4 o'clock. Would you please call the roll for the Parks Committee meeting?
Yes, Jennifer Travis. Here. Gwen Martin.
Here.
Kay Headley.
Here.
Cindy Bell is absent. Otis Edwards.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
I so move.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Have a second.
Is that Gwen?
Gwen?
Yes.
Ms. Travis?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mrs. Headley?
Yes.
Mr. Edwards?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
All right. Do we have any reports from the Freedom Fest Committee?
nothing to report yet?
There is nothing to report on the trails at this time. And the tree and board plant is not here today. Okay. Do I have any items that would be needed to be added to the agenda? Okay. The first item is from Mrs. Martin, housekeeping items for our Bell Park and the lake trails.
So I had put a few things on this list just so we could have some discussion. I feel like so often we get in here and we're just kind of checking stuff off. And I've been spending a little extra time at Bell Park and around the lake and wanted to just get some input really from Casey and his crew on maintenance of those trails, schedule. Obviously, it's in the middle of winter. The last time I was there, the Meekers were doing the bridge at the lake. It was just, they were hammering the last board. And I was like, hi, can I use the bridge? So lots is being done out there. I'm just curious about the maintenance of the trails. Once we got across that bridge and kind of over to the other side, you know, it needs some work. Obviously, it hasn't been used in a really long time. So I'm just trying to kind of get, you know, an idea of how that happens, how often y'all are out there. Same with the Bell Park Trail. You know, there's several spots that are low or muddy constantly. Just want some kind of, how is that?
The gravel trail?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
we've been holding off on the gravel trail just so we're not spending extra resources before we make it.
Okay.
There's probably potential that we could take some equipment out there and try to just smooth things out. In the meantime, just so that we can buy us some time. The lake trail is something that our new guys are not as familiar with still. I have talked to Ralph after he finished this bridge, and he and his Ralph Sr., Big Ralph, Dad Ralph, have agreed to, they're going to take our guys out and actually show, like, give them a crash course on the lake trail and, like, give them, because we're not trail clearing people. And I think Bobby would be a good resource too. He's spent hours out there clearing trail. Ralph has agreed to get out there on a weekday and basically teach our guys what they need to do to get out there and make presentable trail.
Okay. Well, and I know we have the Trails Committee, although I don't think it's met recently. I don't know. But at one point, I know there was a gentleman on the Trails Committee that was like, oh, yeah, we'll do, but I don't know. I think it's just a matter of, was that you? Oh, there you go. Great. Check. Okay.
The next item on the agenda is a partnership with the South Sebastian County Fairgrounds.
Yeah. So this came up a little while ago. I had been speaking with Randy over at the fairgrounds and was talking to him about a potential skate park. I know the skate park has come up several times in discussion about something that would be, a nice addition to our parks in Greenwood. Basically, Randy isn't interested. But there is another gentleman, Bob Gleason, who had wanted to do this maybe 6 or 8 years ago. Before you, he said, and before you, he had said that he talked to the city about it, was basically going to give the city the land that now that the fairgrounds owns and is making their new entrance, like directly across from the football parking lot at the high school, and have a skate park. He really wants to see a skate park. At the time, the city was not interested. They thought it would be too much maintenance. I was like, it's a concrete playground. I don't know how much maintenance. Nonetheless, Mr. Gleason is still interested. He owns other pieces of property. And so that might be something that we could look at. I did tell him to reach out to you and to come to one of our meetings if he so is inclined. But I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on having a skate park, if you are interested or if you feel one way or another.
That a group has come here before, a couple, 3-4 years ago, maybe 4. And I mean, they were very passionate. They came to the city council meeting. They came to a parks meeting. There were a whole bunch of them. We love the idea. I don't know if Doug can fill in, the mayor can fill in on any, kind of where it ended.
It ended nowhere. Sorry.
We wanted grants, but
I'll talk to you about Bob Gleason later.
come up to
Okay.
the mic if you would, sir.
Bob's good. Yeah, you mean,
Yes,
thank you very much, because I'll make sure everybody does that in my meeting.
yes.
So, Doug Kinslow, 615 West Elm Street, Greenwood, Arkansas. So it has been discussed for 25 years, probably, kind of like the splash pad. And there were a group, there's been probably 3 large groups that you described a while ago, come and go. I remember the first time we met about, when I was parks director, we met about this. These kids were adults and had kids of their own. And I found some archives in the office that had their names on them when they were 15, asking for a skate park. And then once upon a time, this is just history for whatever it's worth, I drive back and forth when I lived on Bass Street, and I go by First Baptist Church every day. And there was a group of kids at that time utilizing First Baptist Church as a skate park. And the church was willing to do what they could, but it wasn't working out well. And so I stopped one day and I said, why don't you guys come and talk to the city, to the committee or commission? And they did. Very well represented. They had an adult with them. They spoke very eloquently about it. So there's always been a want and or need, I suppose, but certainly a want. And so I don't know how popular they are these days. I'm out of touch with parks, hope not as much as I used to be, I guess, but there's many options. When you talk about a skate park, you can talk about a concrete bowl and adding to it, or you can talk about the modular types too that have the slab, and then you just bring these modular pieces. So I think it's good. I think it's always something good. Over my experience of parks and mayor, cities have them. Sometimes you run into some issues with depending on where that is. If you put it way outside where nobody sees it, sometimes it turns into a problem a little bit,
Mhm.
depending on who the kids that utilize it. But I think it's a good idea. I don't know if that doesn't help you with what you're pursuing, but I don't know. You said Bob mentioned other properties.
Yeah, Bob had mentioned some other properties, but then Casey and I had talked about it a little bit too. And
Yeah.
I mean, maybe there's room at Bell Park. I mean, there seems like there would be, to carve out a
If you
corner
could just
somewhere.
scrape the dirt, you got plenty of rock. You could just have a splash.
I know, right? I mean, the rock's
It's-
already there.
that's right, it's only
Just
that
smooth
deep.
it out.
I tried to buy that property from Mr. Gleason back when, so ask him if he remembers that. Bob and I are good friends. I've known him forever, but what you're talking about, really that property, and the fair owns it now though, right?
Mhm. Correct.
So that property lends itself to me to one because it can be part of the drainage problem. Now, if it's raining, of course, it's like your trail. If it's creeks over the trail, you can't walk on it. Same thing with a skate park, but you could utilize that for both a little bit.
Utilize drainage basins.
Yeah,
Like behind the courthouse, there's a really perfect
We
looking
looked at
spot, but now
We
the
did-
bypass.
We
We-
looked
we-
at that
yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Also,
Yep.
we did some research.
And the county was willing to donate that property at that
Yeah.
time too.
We also looked into funding, grants and stuff, the Hawk
Yeah.
Foundation. We don't meet their
Yeah.
criteria
Right.
Mhm.
of our population and
That's for
everything.
sure.
So we have looked at that stuff in the past. The last time we talked about this, it was going to cost somewhere around $1 million to build the skate park. So
There was also the mention
So-
of doing what, skate pods or something off,
uh,
little
Yeah,
pockets off
Little
the
pieces off
trail.
the trail.
Trail.
If we
Yeah,
couldn't
Just
do an
having-
actual park.
Having a rail here and a rail there, whatever those things are called, just,
Mhm.
let the kids utilize. Now they would be utilizing the trail to get to these pods, which some may not think that's good. I don't know, but
and I don't know if the trail is smooth enough.
they don't care these days.
Okay, gotcha.
They like ramping and stuff.
But we have looked at it in the past,
Yeah.
and that was one of
Yeah.
the big things was the cost. And we looked at different grants at the time, but we just did not fit
Yeah, you're not going to get a Tony Hawk
No.
the criteria for
unless
that.
they've changed it.
But yeah, but the last time we talked about it was when our previous director, and she was quoting us a number of about $1 million.
Yeah, and I know, and I heard her do that, and that's certainly possible. It's kind of like a splash pad. You can spend 250,000 and get a little bitty tiny piece of concrete, or you can have a nice something else for over $1 million. And these days, it's always anymore. $500,000 is nothing when you're talking. I mean, concrete, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think if you're asking me, I think it's a nice idea. I think it's cool. I think it would be utilized. I think there's still a lot of kids that have kind of hung their skateboards up because there's no place to play. They used to come to the square.
Mhm.
We kind of had to deal with that a little bit. Like, hey guys, we want you to have this, but you can't skate on these stones. It's not a cemetery, but that's not a good idea on that curb. So
But
One
I
of the drawbacks of a thriving community where we're not completely poor is we don't qualify for these grants that we
Right.
need.
right.
And that's hard. It makes it hard
Now-
for any group to try to get something
Now,
done.
Parks and Tourism might still, that may be a thing for them. I know splash pads was a big thing as you're utilizing. That might be something they're interested in.
But I do like the idea of a skate park.
Yeah,
Or at
it's
least because it just gives another activity.
I'd go out
for-
there and break my neck real quick. So I'd be
for all
all
the
in.
kids. It's just, it was the cost when we discussed it the last time and finding a location. They had talked about those pockets
Odds on the
and
trail.
everything, but
They got excited about that. The kids that were skating at that time, and they're probably already grown now too, but
So.
there's always another generation. They like that idea. Anyway,
What's a good step forward, just be identifying a location, even if you identify that location and you start with one item, even if it's just like a equivalent to a bicycle pump track. Just something, some feature for them to get started, and then you build upon that. But, all that starts with the location and the plan of what you want it to look like.
you go to the one in Fort Smith on the river, and that gets used a lot.
A lot.
Yeah. a lot.
Mayor, do you have a list of any contacts we could give Gwen if she wanted to go down that path and
Yeah,
contact some of those people that are
He's got
passionate?
'em.
Okay, Casey.
What I had, he's got, but yeah, I mean,
I mean, you might even get a committee organized of
Yeah.
youngins that really want to get involved.
Well, and I think if
Cool.
we
youngin.
publicized it a little bit, there may be even some companies that step up that are concrete, that do, steel or pipe, that would donate either their services or the materials. So. Okay.
I like it.
kinda wonder if the RTP grants would fund something like that.
Wouldn't be surprised. Especially if you connect it to a trail or utilize the trail to get there for the kids and
Yeah.
back. That's a big deal.
Right.
He knows that. So
Mhm.
I'll help any way I can.
Thanks.
I think the company is called RAMP or AMP or something, it stands for something.
It stands for something. Great.
Something skater related.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get that.
Okay.
The next item is Pocket Park at the new Masonic Lodge.
And this is something that Mayor Kenslow had mentioned to me and probably to others a little while back. And I was just curious, and Mayor Kenslow, this, you might need to come back up to the microphone, kind of where that stands. Obviously, we've all seen the dirt work that has been done for the Masonic Lodge, and there's still this nice piece of property next to it. So we're just curious if that's happening or what the.
Yeah. So when Buddy Lloyd approached us originally, or me originally, about the Masonic, the utilizing the property, which we did that. We're happy to do that for the Masons. So they now have a place to build their new lodge, since in essence, we're taking their other one because of the extension of Main Street. But my idea, and I think Travis, and it might go back as far as Michael, had a drawing, if you will, of a little bit of a second. Basically, if you see the pad now, that's where the building is going to be. And then I'm horrible with directions, to the right, if you're looking at it, whatever direction that is, between that and the building, the existing building, that's ours too, of course. And there's a couple of trees there. And so my idea, and so now that's going to have to accommodate a parking lot, a drive. There'll be a front parking lot on the building as it stands now, probably 8 or 9 slots, and then a parking lot with a drive-through road beside the building that will take you to the back lot behind the existing, what's that building called?
House of Holland.
House of Holland. It'll go, because that's our lot back there too. We have a lot, a little lot, but it's a lot. So idea was we were going to be able to drive through there and get out, and maybe even having some parking space back there, but to still leave green space between that road and driveway next to the House of Holland building. So it was never really thought of as a big park, but just a pocket park of maybe a couple of benches sitting there with some trees, and maybe even in a perfect world, a water fountain or something there, just to have a place for people to sit and visit while they're shopping downtown or something. So we don't have a drawing for that, but I mean, there might be. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I'll look through my files and see if there was a rendering from Travis or Michael, either one. But I think it's a great idea. I'm all about little sections like that you can be a park. You don't want it to become a big maintenance issue, certainly, but there's not enough property there for it to be a big maintenance issue. It'll be very minimal. So I think it'd be a great idea.
Maybe
It'll be soften it.
couple little swings.
Yeah.
just for-
Yeah, you could probably do whatever, just depend. Well, I will say this, when planning department has some plans on that, you have all the plans on that for the building itself. I mean, I know where the footprint is. We're all looking at it, but you don't have anything. Okay. Which is a little not his fault. They got a little ahead of themselves with the pad. Yeah. So as we move along, I'll bring, or Hunter can bring you what is left to do something with, if that's fair.
It was proposed by the builder to include a pavilion of sorts in some of the green space that was going to be required on site, and maybe a couple of donated benches and some shrubbery, or maybe a couple shade trees to beautify that area.
Great.
Most of it's going to be concrete, so trying to incorporate that pocket park is a great idea. If we can do it through the Masonic Lodge or, cooperative agreement, that would be great.
And I think they would be open, as they are. I think they already are open to doing that, being partners with us, or maybe even more than that. But that, leaving that rock wall of that building is going to be cool. Hopefully that stays there for many years to come. So I think that would look nice. And if you're looking for a name, it's spelled KINSLOW for the park. I'm joking. Oh, did he? Oh, okay. Okay. So anyway,
Okay, thank
that's a
you.
great idea. Yes, ma'am.
Potential revenue, recreational revenue sources.
Yes. Okay. So this is the last thing that I was going to talk about. Starting to just kind of think of other ways that the Parks Department can kind of become a Parks and Recreation Department, and maybe generate a little revenue. Obviously, Casey's doing a great job getting the Bell Park Pavilion rented out and utilized. You know, I saw on the agenda this time around that, you know, he had included those stats from the last several years. What I was thinking, since we do have, you know, several great parks in the city, but especially with the addition of the splash pad this year, I was thinking it would be great to do a couple week-long camps. So we hire high school kids to be in charge of 5 or 6, you know, campers. They will spend the week doing different activities at Bell Park. So the pavilion would be utilized during the week as kind of a home base, but we're going to teach them how to do pickleball, basketball, frisbee golf, sand volleyball, soccer. I mean, we have all these things, and then each day they can finish at the splash pad. So we're not only utilizing everything that our city, you know, kind of offers in that recreation space, but we're also reminding people that, hey, we have this splash pad. Hey, we have these facilities. Because so often I'm on Hey Greenwood, or I'm talking to somebody and I'll say something, or they're like, oh, if we only had a sand volleyball court. I'm like, we do. It's right at Bell Park. Or if we only had, we do. So it'd be great if our families knew about it. And one of the best ways to do it is camps. Parents are always looking for something to do with their kids. And if we can do a camp from, you know, 9 to 3 or 9 to 4, you know, Monday through Friday, it's great. And it gives kiddos in high school that may not be able to have full-time jobs because they're about to start football, you know, 2 days, or, you know, fast dogs in July. We do our camps in June. And so they're over the course of, you know, maybe 3 weeks or 4 weeks.
Have you happened to talk to Kenny Sunday with the Boys and Girls Club?
I have not.
He might have some input ideas,
Yeah,
you know, because of all those kids there with,
Yeah.
he does things with.
sure. Yeah. I think it would need to be separate. I think the Boys and Girls Club, I mean, if that's not totally true. I mean, I guess you can and have your kids at the Boys and Girls Club and they bring them over
That's
to
what I
that.
was talking about.
But yeah, I've done a lot of this before in my former life. I did a lot of these kind of summer camps and things. I've talked to Casey a little bit about it. We're, you know, kind of throwing around a few things on how to organize it and get it structured. But I think it could be really good. And honestly, it's nothing for us as the Parks Commission. Granted, we would be sponsoring it, but the kids are going to be paying the tuition for the camps. And then we're paying the high school kids out of that. So there should be no cost to us, but we should, you know, garnish a little bit of revenue from it and the publicity.
Are you willing to be the adult that takes care of what needs to be done?
100%. Yes.
Okay,
I
because
will.
we need somebody that
Yeah.
can be responsible for whatever it
Yeah.
is.
No, I can do
That'd be
that.
great.
In a legality, just asking the legality, can we as a city or as a park commission charge people to do those kind of programs?
If we can, we can, especially if we justify the cost, our cost.
And then how does that affect going into our budget?
Yeah,
Would
you would
be-
just need to create different ins and outs line items in your budget, and I would establish a committee, like a standing committee for that, to
Okay,
be accountable for all of it.
okay.
Sort of like a Freedom Fest committee is.
Is there any liabilities toward us?
Well, we have tort immunity where if somebody gets hurt, the city's not liable.
But if we're hosting,
That would be a question for the city attorney. For sure.
We would have each camper sign a waiver. I mean, that's pretty standard. Where I used to live, the city put these on all the time. They had camps year round. They would have soccer camps. They would have baseball. I mean, they had baseball and softball fields also, but their recreation department was all over this kind of stuff.
It's probably a lot bigger than our department.
16,000 people, I mean, versus 10,000 in Greenwood. It wasn't, it was just a really robust city. I mean, it's what, I think it's what you make of it. And Greenwood has so much to offer, you know, it's just, we just need to utilize it, I think. I mean, we could do fishing tournaments at Liberty Park. I'd love to see that, you know, get those ponds stocked, do those twice a year. We can do stuff at Greenwood Lake. You know, we could do little sailing tournaments. We could do, you know, there's so many different things that we could do.
Are you
The
talking-
Game and Fish, I think, does fishing derbies. don't
Oh,
they?
good.
They stock it at Liberty even.
Yeah, they still have to be hosted.
Casey, what was the bike program, pedal kids? The one that traveled around and they hosted, like learn how to ride a bike events?
Yeah.
In small, I think it was pedal kids. That did something good to host. You know, like my kids, they don't know how to ride a bike and I feel like a horrible father, but you know, they're 6 and 7, they should be riding bikes. And that's good. That'd be a cool event, you know, for
Yeah.
like a week long, taking them up to Bell Park and someone teaching how to ride a bike.
not in
Go
Bell
down the hill.
Park.
Down there. At the
Trail,
on the trail, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, doing those kind of events brings the community together and it shows that, you know, what did I say the other day, Charlotte, that this is a great place to live, you know? So it feels like
Yeah,
home.
it feels
Yeah,
like home.
it feels like home. Like somebody's going to teach your kid how to ride his bike, you know? So, yeah. You know what? Give them to me for an afternoon. I'll do it. I've taught a few. Yeah, yeah.
I'm not opposed. My only worry is that if this was in June or before July, they were pretty hectic per week.
Mhm.
The days get busier as July 4th gets closer.
So here's a suggestion. If this is something that you're interested in, that you're willing to take on, why don't you create a committee, get some people who can help you and to involve and get things going. And maybe we could put this on the agenda for next month. Thank you.
Yeah.
And maybe you probably need to get this probably out by May at the latest.
Oh, no, March.
March?
Yeah.
Okay. Get that out as soon, as quickly as we can, if this is decided on by the committee. But have a committee, have a plan, have a budget, everything that you need we can do it. So does that sound legitimate? Okay.
Yeah, the standing committees are composed of one or more commissioners, but less than a quorum, of course. And it would hold a membership for 1 year or until succeeded. And then the committee chair reports at the regular monthly meeting. So we could add that. We'll set that up next meeting. We'll have it on the agenda to add the camps/clinics committee.
Can we just call it the recreation committee?
Sure.
I mean,
I'll be on the committee.
yes, that's what I was going to say.
We'll,
I was about to say, do you want to do that?
if you want to submit the formal, just paperwork for everybody to look at next month, it'll be on the agenda.
Okay. You'll tell me what that formal paperwork is.
Just a little,
I think it's all the things, all bullet points.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
a list of what your budget is, what
Oh,
your
okay.
what your objective or your
Goals,
yeah, what's
activities.
mission statement.
Mission
Yes,
statement,
there you
yeah.
go.
Charlotte, is there a requirement for committee members to live in city limits?
No. Nope. not at all.
Not for me, but I've got a recommendation when time comes.
Okay, yeah, no, we will take committee members from anywhere.
All right. Is there anything else? Yes.
saying that I'm not willing to help. I'm just saying that.
You can't be in charge. Totally fine.
Okay. No.
It won't.
Nominations for alternate commission members.
Yes, sorry.
We have two more nomination, or two more people who have submitted letters for nomination to the Parks Committee. You should have a copy in front of them. One is a Colton Redding and one is a Bobby Price. Mr. Price is here today. We are allowed to have at least one, allowed to have one alternate, and then we could have a alternate in case Mr. Price could not be a part of the committee, or if we have two committee members who need to step down for any reason. So please look over these and let me know what you thought. Sorry.
So I will clarify
Okay.
that we have in the bylaws one alternate member that is confirmed by council. That way they're ready to go. So whoever the commission picks as the alternate member would be the one that I take to council to have them confirm that individual. But what this doesn't address in our bylaws is if we have two interested parties or whatever, I don't think it would be inappropriate that I keep that person's info, with the alternate member, even though that person's not going to be confirmed by council. But in the event in the future, whoever knows that vacancy might occur, and whoever that this commission chooses and is confirmed by council, we could, and if they couldn't do it whenever that time came, if it did, then we could just go to this next one and get them confirmed. If that's the way you want to handle it, since there are, really good selections.
Having a backup to a backup.
Yeah, I mean, the bylaws doesn't call for that, but I'm just saying we could do it that way if you'd like.
You need a vote or resolution, or you just need to
Or
talk about
Do alternates need to be reconfirmed every so often? And
They
if
just,
they're not actively on the commission, they're more likely to fall off. And therefore, you would need an alternate to the alternate.
right, we haven't run into that yet, but this person, if once selected and confirmed, that person just stays involved as far as receiving everything that the Parks Commission receives. They're at liberty to come to these meetings or not. So they'll want to, just remain informed about what's going on. That's the whole point of it. But we haven't had it yet where one of them has not actively been paying attention. So we haven't run into that yet. So I don't know.
That could be a problem, but.
Yeah.
I'm glad it hasn't been.
We didn't used to have alternates at all on these commissions, but something that Water Commission started, worked well, was a good idea. So the Parks Commission adopted it as well. And now here we are.
May I make a suggestion that we go with this plan? I just did.
I mean, it does say alternate member contact information shall be included in the commission membership roster and maintained by the secretary. So I'm just saying that I could maintain both of these, but only one alternate, unless you change the bylaws, will be confirmed by council
So our job now is just to pick one of them out of the two.
to be confirmed.
I'd like to submit a name.
Okay.
How
You
does
wanna
this
ask
work?
him to introduce
I'm
himself?
asking you
You
how
wanna
this
hear from
works.
him?
Mr. Price, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us anything that you'd like for us to know?
I'm Bobby Price. Been a Greenwood resident since 2017, but I did go through all the years at Greenwood school system from kindergarten through high school. Brandon Tate was actually one of my teachers, believe it or not.
No.
Not to age him or anything. But I feel like I'm a pretty active member of the community. Professional life, I'm a IT nerd, but on the volunteer side, I work at the Greenwood City Fire Department as a firefighter. So I've always liked to volunteer. Before that, I worked at White Bluff at that fire department. So it's always been something I like to do is to help out. I've worked with Casey on several different projects. I was a guy originally that was out cutting trails at the Greenwood Lake location. I had to recently stop just because some of the property lines and the trail kind of intersect in some areas. So I'm kind of just holding off until I get the go ahead that we're good to go to start cutting some more trail on that. So hopefully that gets approved pretty soon because that's something else I like to do. Just trail work. I'm a big mountain biker. So back in the day, I was out there all the time on the mountain bike. I still go out there and hike a lot. The city trail, I usually run on that about once a day, if not twice a day. So most of the parks around here I'm actually using and I'm familiar with them. And kind of like what Gwen's mentioned, that a lot of people in this community forget about what we offer. So I'm always trying to post pictures, get other people out there, get people active. Because we have a lot of cool stuff currently. We have a lot of stuff we can add, but right now we have a lot of options. Just if you ask any of the citizens of the town right now, it's like, hey, did you know we have this? More than likely, you're going to say, no, I had no idea that we did that. So that's something I always like to push as a personal project. It's just each week, each month, try to take a picture of us doing something, rather it be kayaking at Greenwood Lake, fly fishing at the Liberty Lake, which I'm glad Casey finally got that cleared out to where you can actually use it. And I'll definitely say, since I live right next to it, before I would see 1-2 people a week out there. Now, like every day, it's like 10 people plus out there fishing. And that's during this time of year where it's pretty cold. So I can't wait until the spring and summertime that more and more people will start using it. But that's me in a nutshell, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And I make a motion then that we select Bobby as an alternate, first alternate. And this other fella, yeah, I got his name here. It's-
I'll
is the
second the motion.
alternate.
As a backup,
Well, however you want to write it.
second by Gwen.
Well, there's first alternate, second alternate. I mean, unless that's complicated.
Well, it's just bylaws don't afford for it. So that's why I just like to
Okay,
go with
so
what
we're
we have in our writing.
We're
Ms.
breaking new
Travis?
ground here.
Mrs. Martin,
Yes.
Ms. Headley,
Yes.
and Ms. Reverends.
Yeah.
Unanimous.
Okay, yes.
All right.
Yeah, you got me confused. Yeah.
Foundation report. Nothing to report. Director's report.
The splash pad, I don't know if anyone's been by the past couple days. We have a roof. The metal for the roof finally came in, and some of the fascia metal came in. So that's on the side of the building as well. They have been working on the footings for those shade coverings that we caught early. If you walk by and you see plastic on top of the concrete or areas on the outskirts of the concrete pad, that's where those footings are. I got a message today that those implements are being shipped to us. I think they're leaving today. So our benches, picnic tables, and shade coverings are on the way. Paul from Crawford told me that they are going to start concrete after it warms up a little bit, just because concrete in this cold is terrible. The inside of the restroom building is complete, just as I listed. Talked about concrete. They just started clearing and grubbing Fox Run Road. They've removed some brush piles that we had at the top of the hill that are that would be on their project or their the boundaries for that site. So I know that they've made it up the hill. Water and sewer, the water line's complete. Sewer line's at about probably close to 75%. They ran into an issue at the very last manhole that they had to set, that a gas line was in the way. So they're having to make some course corrections on that sewer line. SWEPCO is currently starting the process of construction. They've started to take some of they're starting to work on taking some of their power off of that power pole on the corner of Fox Run and Main. Seth estimated that their completion date would be about 3 to 4 weeks.
Will we be ready to open in May?
We had a meeting last Tuesday and I asked them what their confidence level was. They said and I hate to even say this because it's just been one thing after another, but if nothing major happens, they're running ahead of schedules for May.
So beginning of May, we possibly will be able to be done.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. The goal is and this was mentioned on the call that we had with every contractor involved in this entire project: water, sewer, road, electricity, and the splash pad, and all the engineers in between. The goal is to have this completed in time to where we're able to not only open by May, but also have time to test everything so that we're not out there the night before we set an open date trying to get things to work the way they're supposed to.
Do you have a tentative open date or no?
Typically it's Memorial Day.
Mm.
If it's me, I want to push those dates a little bit further or earlier and later so that we can get as much use out of it as possible. My preference would be early May, but most municipalities choose Memorial Day to Labor Day. We're typically a little bit warmer before and after those dates. So
Yeah.
I don't want to say play it by ear, but I think right now the best thing we could do is play it by ear and then choose a date to open once we get to where, maybe we're putting landscaping in or putting the finishing touches on some fencing, just so that we're 100% that we're going to be able to meet our goal. I've had a couple people ask me about the switchback trail at the east loop of the lake. This was the trail that was an Eagle Scout project. Water and Sewer Commission, they approved the construction of a new tank at our water treatment plant. It is gigantic and it is right in the area where that trailhead was going to be. So we're kind of having to pivot or to choose to shrink our parking lot / trailhead area down a little bit. That trail is completely cleared. It's in, from what I understand, fairly decent shape. And it switches back all the way to the top of the hill by that water treatment plant. The only bummer is that whenever you get to the top of the hill, you wind up with a fence in your face. So Rod Powell has agreed to push that fence back. It's just a matter of how close that tank is going to be whenever time comes, after they have it constructed. I talked to Elliot today from Craft and Toll in regard to the paving project from the Oaks to Bell Park. He said that he has not heard back from the state yet after submitting 60% plans. He intends to call them tomorrow if he doesn't hear back by close of business today. I'll keep everybody updated as that comes.
How long does that usually take? Because I noticed
It takes a long time. There is
Yeah,
a lot of bureaucracy involved.
there hadn't been change since November.
Just wacky forms back and forth. And partially, I don't know where the mix-up was, but somehow a project number got changed. And we were communicating about different projects between, I had a different project number, Elliot had a different project number, and the state had a different project number. And for some reason, all the project numbers were different, but the project names were all the same and no one connected the dots. So that set us back by whenever the mayor and I went and met with Whitney, we kind of figured it out. Whitney from RDOT put me on the straight and narrow. We learned that we were having issues with project numbers. Yep. The inclusive park, I actually had an exciting Zoom meeting this morning. I met with someone from Montreal, Canada, who is an expert in fundraising. He's like a headhunter for fundraising. He finds every nonprofit organization in your state and or top 100 companies in your area within 50 miles of you and gives you a list and gives you very specific strategies to fundraise with them. So we're going to work with him and our small committee of gals and try to get the wheels turning on that.
What's his take?
What's his take? Like, as far as our progress?
Like the percentage?
How much does he get?
Oh, what's his take? Oh, sorry. I understand now.
Sorry, I should have said it more clearly.
0. He is actually funded by Little Tykes, or the parent company of Little Tykes, which is the playground the brand of playground we're building. And Little Tykes has partnered with the nonprofit consultant that we partnered with, Unlimited Play. They don't charge us anything either. So we've kind of just fallen into these partnerships that are free and could be advantageous if we use them correctly.
On that note, I don't know if the rest of the committee has seen, but we were in
Oh yeah.
Due South. It was a very nice article that was written up about our inclusive program, our playground. And so it was just a very nice article and taught about how it was coming about and everything. So I just wanted to say a shout out to the committee and to Casey for having this in Due South.
Do it. Yep. Our 2025 projects that we'll start to update on are, this is all the capital side of things, staying the Ed Wilkinson Pavilion. We've talked about a septic system. I think that we'll start to delve into that a little bit further, just to explore options first and then go from there. And then we reassigned our TAP grant. No, our RTP grant for a bike and pedestrian master plan, something that's a little more up to date. And I'm waiting to hear back from RDOT on that. Once again, forms on forms on forms. I've updated the booking snapshot for the pavilion. So you'll see kind of a year over year approach to how the pavilion's booked. You'll have a little bit more historical data, and then also kind of an idea of what revenue is running. It's not exact. These are based on like what your average booking would be for, just what things average out to be. So it's going to give us a better idea of where we've been, where we're going, where we're at.
So the 25, these are things that have already been booked for this year.
That's correct. Yep,
And so we could have more bookings the rest of the year.
that's correct.
All right.
Yep. Yeah, we can add to that number for sure. I've also brought in some supplementals, if you want to call them. And this is just for your information. It's just something, Gwen, I had already had this after we talked the other day, but I thought I'd bring it. And it's not, I don't think it's quite as specific as you want, but it still gives you an idea of where our capital money is going. And again, this shows you where we're at or where we've been, our past, last year, 2023 and 2024. And then this also shows you the 6 years previous to that. So we spent a shade over $2 million in 2 years on capital projects just by working through backlog projects. while I was doing that, I got curious and I thought, how much engineering money have we spent? So the second page to that is, it shows you how much we've spent on engineering for each of those projects. And we spend a lot of money on engineering. And we talk about it every year, but it's almost to the point to where we could hire a part-time engineer to work through water, sewer, sidewalk, street, storm, and parks, and probably still come out ahead. Yeah, so the past 2 years, we spent $240,000 on engineering for basically 3 or 4 projects.
Usually, we've been using the 10% number on engineering to the actual project.
Right, yeah.
And that amount comes to 11.12%. So we need to consider
I think that a lot of that is being soaked up and going back and forth on splash pad design too. There was some waffling for a little bit.
Is that what that 154,000 is from 23? Is that? I don't see like where those numbers come from, but I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter.
We're talking about the
Yeah,
engineering.
so
Yeah. Does it say?
There's the total project and here's your engineering.
Yeah, but like how that was accumulated.
it's like I said, it's not as specific as you want yet. I'll start to drill down by project. If you want to see those
Yeah.
past numbers specifically, I can do that for sure. That 154, we didn't have the splash pad fund yet, so there would be some splash pad engineering in that. And then in 2023, we also spent quite a bit of engineering money on some trail lighting.
Yeah.
The trail lighting.
Mhm.
The last page, that's kind of the grid breakdown, this shows training that I'm seeking out this year. We budgeted what I feel like was a substantial amount of money for me to receive some training. I don't want to say that some of it's unnecessary, but a lot of this is necessary just for the splash pad. Some of the governing bodies and the health department like to see that's the first one, the second one. And then there's also a third training course through the National Parks and Recreation Association. They like to see those 3. So I'm trying to get those knocked out as soon as possible. One of the ones that is outside of the scope of my job, I have a water distribution license. Technically, it could still be applicable to a splash pad. You're distributing water, but it is extremely complicated to obtain. And the only cost to the city is lodging to stay somewhere for 3 days. Being that the city is a member of the Arkansas Rural Water Association, there's no cost for the training. And I would be extremely grateful if you would allow me to go renew that license. It's very hard to get. It has like a 13% pass rate in the state.
What do you use it for?
What,
Or what
right,
is- maybe not you right now, but what?
taking
would you-
taking the certified pool operator class, I'm breezing through it because I have all of this distribution stuff. It's just it's water math.
Would that license qualify you to be able to run our water distribution department?
Sure.
It's the same qualification level that we're required to hold in that position. It's a substantial license.
So do we need to add that to our budget?
No,
Well, he's got it in here.
everything I have is inside the budget still. Nothing, I mean,
Just being transparent.
yeah, I just wanted to the last time I went and renewed it, there was some questions about it. So I don't want to be,
You want to head that off at
I
the
don't,
past?
I want to be weird about it.
Yeah. If someone says, what's that
It's a-
have to do with your job?
It's a
Yeah.
water license. It's not a park license. We have a splash pad, though having that water license is helping me out some. And I think that's all I've got, unless y'all have questions.
What's Madison Trail?
So that's it's in Madison, Wisconsin, and it's a trail it's the biggest trail training seminar in the United States.
Anybody have any questions? All right. Tom, do you have anything that you want to share with us?
More than you probably want to hear.
Yes, sir.
I have the microphone.
The website got brought up recently, and the website is ugly,
Oh, thank you.
very ugly. And right now, some of the redirects on the city website are broken.
Mhm.
David Jamel wants like $1,500 to basically totally transform it. There's already $1,000 in the budget for Jamel that we don't use. Tom, am I right? Unless it's somehow split up between departments.
I know everything at the top of my head, but that's not one of them.
Okay. I know that David Jamel does not bill us directly for website services.
Well,
Parks
we
Department.
do pay, but
I'm saying the Parks
he's
Department.
wondering
directly.
if the 1,000 that's in the parks budget is part of broken up between departments thing that we do with Jamel Digital.
It's split whenever we do the billing to them. There's a part that comes out of parks.
Got it. Okay.
I don't know the dollar amount, but we do pay him out of parks and police.
So he wants
Okay.
$1,500 to bring it all into our city website or existing website,
Separate website.
all
I
separate.
more or less said take the data from the website the way it is right now, and then take what you did for the police website and replicate it. Make it look just like the police website, but it's just a different page.
It looks really good, police one.
Can we not just have it under the city? Is there a reason you want a separate website?
Because that's the way it's always been.
Let's change that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, we're Greenwood Parks, let's not
Yep.
be greenwoodparks.com or, just go to Greenwood, you click on it. It shouldn't redirect you. It should just open a new page, just like it does when you click on the planning or any of that. Like I've always found that kind of weird.
So let me go back and ask him what he would charge just to add a page to
Yeah.
the
Well, a
Greenwood
couple
site.
pages maybe, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And then I can just use. Yeah. I didn't know if that was split up.
It's your portion of it.
Okay.
So
got
the
it.
parks
Yeah.
website was built by Brooke Holland, who used to be the mayor's assistant long ago. And I really never knew why she did it on Weebly and did this separate thing. I asked, and then a lot of people did ask about it back then. It was, I think, before we even had a Parks Commission even.
Hmm.
It was just Parks Committee, and I don't think there's any real good explanation other than there was some veteran stone stuff. And I don't know if they wanted to.
Well, and she
Be
could
separate.
probably easily manipulate it if she's owning the site and was maintaining it, which is great. Maybe that was necessary at the time. But the information we have right now is pretty static. So I think
Yeah, and I
just
don't-
having,
Why couldn't
I'm
it
not-
be? There's
Yeah.
no reason it couldn't be, right?
yeah.
I'm not partial to it because it's ugly.
So
That's
there's
it,
no
you
reason
cannot
it
get
could
rid of
not be part of the city's just website
Correct.
or a page on it.
The only thing that I could see issue with is potentially registration for events, but I can work that out with David probably.
That's what I wondered, because in like pavilion bookings, does that happen through there?
It
Didn't you
should.
have some
Let me-
service?
Let me ask David to see what his recommendation is, and then we can kind of go from there. That work?
Okay, this is how you ended fiscal year 2024 in as far as your restricted funds and the operating funds that basically you have. These are the funds you have control over. The Parks A&P Grant Fund, you'll notice, ended with 0 because you actually were a little bit in the deficit category. So city sales and use tax had to fund that in order to bring it to 0. But if you'll notice, the budget was actually about $25. So then a lot of the reason for that was there was a lot a carryover that happened last year that didn't get in the budget. That was invoices that was anticipated to be paid in 23 that were paid in 24. This year, we're carrying those over. Anything that we pay now that was a 23, we put in your budget as a carryover item, and then it'll be a wash. As far as the restricted for the trails, that 96186 balance is still in there. It's still available. It's still restricted for trails. As far as your parks, inclusive park is concerned, it's 10,868. It's made up of two monies. 9,868 is the amount contributed by A&P that Parks is holding on to in order to distribute at the point in time when it's being requested. Usually A&P is given that money for a specific item. They're giving it for a piece of a playground equipment that they chose and said, here's the money for that. And so it's just being parked there because you have an inclusive park restricted fund. There's also a community member that came in and donated $1,000. And so it's in there as well. And eventually that's going to be transferred over to wherever the funds will be held as far as the 501c3, once it's established, is maintained, it'll be transferred out. That inclusive park has not received your $275,000 committed amount. That's still in your city sales and use tax. It's still sitting in this $215,000. As far as your budget is concerned, you've committed 150 of it. Yeah, I believe 150 or 125,000. So that's committed for 2025's budget. So you are pushing off to 2026, the remaining portion of what's committed for it, because in discussions, we don't believe that they'll be at a point where I think they're doing it in phases. And as they raise money, they'll start doing projects. And we figured that that's probably an amenable solution to where your fund reserve is. And then at the bottom line, you're increased from your balance in 2023. And the increase is happening because of the splash pad. That 487,000 is still committed money. It's still in the bank as of the end of the year, but it's committed specifically for the splash pad. So even though you've increased your fund balance by 15,000, you've decreased the fund balance specifically because of the amount that has now been shifted to committed funds, not unrestricted. You have 215,000 basically of unrestricted money. Your revised budget was you were supposed to end with 255,000, but the end of year numbers specifically to cover the Parks A&P grant and some other things that came up, you missed that revised budget by about $40,000. As far as the increase and decrease the budget amount, you are 64% higher than the budget with what your all-in dollar amounts are. Specifically, the $714,000 is 64% higher than the budget. Specifically, though, it's tabulating in, again, the committed monies. As far as your budget is concerned, you can go through and at your perusal, it's, was that handed? You got it in writing? Okay, you can peruse that. If you have any questions, you can get back with me. You do see on your city sales and use tax for parks that the amount for the city sales and use tax revenue did increase. We are above what we budgeted. The 4.5% it was more like 6%. Or a little over 4.5%, 5 something. So that's the amount that we're budgeting a 3.5%, I believe, increase for 2025. You know that because you've seen the budget. As far as the lastly, I think it's this last page, the Parks A&P grant expenditure budget. If you wanted to know how the dollar amounts broke out by the categories and by the specific event within the categories, that's up there on your screen right now. The public relations falls into 3 categories: Fall Festival, Christmas in the Park, and Freedom Fest. And you'll see that you budgeted $90,000 in 2024. Oh, the movies in the park as well, excuse me. You ended up spending 88,009. That's 1,023 better than what the budget was for public relations. Capital improvements, there was this $7,400 that came through as an unbudgeted CIP expense that was carryover from 23 that was specifically for the lighting, maybe? I don't know. Disc golf course, yes. And then the second bridge at Liberty Park was 8,000. And we adjusted the budget for the clearing cost as well, which we paid. So you were over by that $7,800 in the capital improvement projects. Otherwise, you would have been pretty close as far as the dollar amounts are concerned. Capital expenditures, the inflatable screen, you were 616 less than what you budgeted. You budgeted 29.5, came in at 28.8. You started with 1539 before before the final month of December. You ended up with expenditures of public relations of 1,020. A expense versus budget of 1,023, 616. Those are surpluses. Capital improvements was $7,800 over. When you add all that up, your actual year-to-date deficit was $5,700. City sales and use tax covered that. So we don't end carrying over a deficit in the year. My balance sheet has to have everything positive. So we knew there was going to be some coverage. The worst it could be is 7,200 and ended up being 5,719. And as far as the budget is concerned, we're having a budget study session right after we end this meeting today. There's going to be some going back to the drawing boards. The budget is not where we need it to be as a city. It's way not good. I will give you a little bit of why. Let me go to, I was doing some works here. Here's the Parks Department. All right, let's look at all of your monies. So you have a parks operation, which is funded by general fund. This is not money that you have actually in revenues for. You just have basic expenses. You do have revenue, but it's revenues that you gain from the county sales tax and grants, mostly the county sales tax. And you notice that we were budgeting 263,000. We ended up at 247. That's because the county sales tax was significantly lower than we thought. It actually was no growth. So we're budgeting no growth for 2025. But down here on the bottom, you had a $13,000 deficit in 2024. You budgeted a $6,000 surplus. Surplus is minor, or zero is where you want to be because you're not asking general to fund that. You have to have a balanced budget. And in order to have a balanced budget, this number right here should be zero. That's saying you're spending exactly what your budgeted revenue stream is. So if the revenue stream increases, you could go over your budgeted expense line as long as you don't net a deficit. When you net a deficit, it's not balanced. Well, you notice you're not balanced in 25 either. You're right now budgeting a $19,000 deficit. And that 19,000 is carrying over to the general fund, where the general fund's got the unrestricted balance has to fund that. And that's what it says. If I were to scoot over here, amount provided from general fund to balance the budget. Now, the law says you have to have a balanced budget, but the way we're balancing that budget is pulling from the general fund. You cannot, we're not using parks, city sales and use tax to balance it. That's a separate restricted money that's based on the taxpayers that generated the vote that said they're going to pay that tax. And then they also stipulated how you were going to use it. And you can't use it to cover your salaries and your operations. It's for specific things. So that's why that's isolated. Your Parks A&P grant fund you're looking at is restricted, city sales and use tax. You had a threshold of 250,000. It looks like if you live on that budget that you currently have, you're going to exceed that, but still 298,000. I'd like to get that built back up a little bit before you start going on some other large projects. So all in all, you're going to be looking at a parks fund account all in of 317,000. Now, the problem with your city sales and use tax is that you have 275,000 that is committed to the all-inclusive park. You have 125,000 in your budget. So you're looking at 150,000 that they could call in. If they get really going and they're ready for it and they need that money, that's going to come out of your 298,000. That's not budgeted, just so you know. So we've got to kind of look at that. So this 19,000 is probably going to be something that, depending on how other departments come in, and everybody knows it. I mean, even planning knows it. We've talked with police. We've talked everybody. I'll just show it to you. Might as well. This is what it looks like. We're going to, let me see if I can reduce that. Are you not reducing?
No.
Oh, the 220. Yeah. All right, now I'm going to make it bigger. Why doesn't it automatically go? Are you getting control or shift? Shift. You want control. I'm getting control. Now it's working. Thank you. Cool. All right. Go down to the bottom. So we start the general fund at the end of 2023 with 2,000,007 in the general fund. That's the unrestricted monies that can go anywhere. The only thing is the departments that fall under the general fund are general and admin, fire, police, animal control, parks, and planning. All of these departments here. We also have a resolution that because there was a surplus that was created with the ARPA shifting to pay the public service police salaries in 2023, we generated a surplus. Well, it was originally dedicated, that first tranche of 972,000 was earmarked for the Water Sewer Commission from the Water Sewer Department. So there was a resolution presented to the council that said we're going to preserve that 972, even though the surplus generated 1.125 million. They said that 972, we're going to go ahead by resolution and commit to the water sewer. That has yet to be pulled out of that in 24. They're not ready for it. So that 2780 or 2,780,000 is going to be reduced by the 972. But in 24, these were the dollar amounts, the 379,192 for fire. Police was a $713,000 deficit, 530 deficit for animal control. Parks was your 13, as I showed you. Then planning was $35,000 to the good. So that is going to, when you take all that into consideration, reduce your general fund unassigned balance from 2,000,007, take out the 972 automatically, you're down to 1,000,006. And if you notice, that carries over up here to the top for the budget for 2025. Every single department right now in 2025 is a deficit to the tune of 1.239 million out of the 1.6. If everybody hits that budget, the general fund's unrestricted balance will be at $447,000. My reserve comfort level is $1 million. That is one catastrophe, one event away from nobody having any money in the general fund. And remember, that's after 2025's revenue stream. That's a deficit over and above what everybody's revenue is.
Are the departments responsible to pay back to the general fund?
No, they're part of the general fund. They are O&M to the general fund. Now we parse out revenue to each of those departments, which is what they're supposed to be balancing to, the revenue stream. And whenever they can't, if there's a good reason for it, there's nothing that says general can't fund them. And going along, as you see in 2024, some departments need it. Police always needs it because they don't have a city sales and use tax to fund their capital side. So we use the franchise fees or the franchise taxes kind of to offset most of that police deficit. So the revenue stream that you see up here in the general department, that $379,000 surplus that was generated, that is including the amounts for the franchise taxes, and that will help offset the deficit in the police. We know that, we understand that, we do have to watch it and control it. And so we have to go back to the drawing board on a lot of this to get them to focus or refocus on a need and a want, get rid of the wants. And they also have to be a little more cognizant of what the inflationary increases are against what their current 2024 spend was. Because what we're trying to do is eliminate what I call PAD in their budget.
What are the biggest differences in police and fire this year versus last year? To make that.
That will be discussed at the meeting right after this one. Yeah, because we got a plan on those two already established. Street's not in this, but street is also in a situation where there's going to have to be some push off. This is not an acceptable budget. So your contribution is 19,004. It might come to where we have to go back and look at it.
I can trim some things, but I don't know if I can give you $553,000.
We've got a plan. Trust me, we've held it. We were here all day yesterday, going over it. I specifically had street, and we had the mayor in. We were talking about the general fund specifically. We talked with police and fire today, and we have something that we want to present. So we'll get that number where it needs to be, and we're going to do it responsibly. We're not going to just willy-nilly cut things. We're going to cut it in a responsible manner and come up with a better plan. But I wanted you guys as a commission to realize where we are. This will not be what's ultimately our budget. Okay, that's where, any questions?
Any comments? I would like to thank Mr. Price for his willingness to be a part of our committee. Also, just for clarification purposes, Mrs. Martin, you are going to head up the recreational committee,
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yes.
Okay. And any other questions or concerns or comments? All right. We adjourn. Oh, do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn.
I'll second the motion.
No, you make the motion.
I make the motion that we adjourn.
Yes.
Anybody want to say it?
I can second that
Okay.
motion.
Thank you.
As soon as it was coming out of my mouth, I was like, I'm not saying the right thing.
Well, you thought he was making the motion.
I know,
Your
right?
brain said.
But he can't make the motion.
He doesn't vote though unless he has to.
Welcome to my world.
Way down there in the back 40.
Yes, nobody's there to keep an eye on Otis today.
Shares it.
These are the biggest